Hi, Barry.
Hey, Eric.
How you doing?
No, better.
Good. Hi, Sam.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
You're echoing.
I'll turn off the speaker here.
Mhm.
Okay, Barry, good to see you again. I don't know if you caught yesterday's session or any notes about it, Eric, but there was
Yeah,
a conflagration yesterday.
I posted a comment in our Facebook for this group. So my
Mhm.
observation there, if you want to look at it.
I just woke up, so I have not
Yeah,
seen it. Would
that's
you
fine.
care to elaborate?
Yeah, I'll read it. Hold on.
Mhm.
Okay. So my observation is both Kayla and Josh shared sensitive information about their past, which made them vulnerable. Kayla was about to make a point related to the video and the GoFundMe that Sam brought up. Josh got triggered by a comment by Kayla and could not let go of his need to be right. This derailed the conversation into what I perceive as a flame war, which degraded the conversation until one party needed to leave it. That's just what I observed.
Thank
Good
you,
point.
Eric. And yes, Barry subsequently left as well. But I'm just curious, you got that from watching where I had posted the
Yeah,
link, or did you watch the entire thing?
just the point where you posted the link where Kayla was feeling unsafe.
Hmm.
And then once I saw the conflict, I watched it a few times, and yeah, because I mean, I could really feel the emotions, and I could see. Now, I studied communication in college, and that phrase "need to be right" is something I remember my professor talking about. So many
Hmm.
of us have that need to make our point and be right. We can't let go of it. That's certain, like that's why I feel that yeah, Josh couldn't let go of that one phrase. That
And did you watch all the way to the end or just a few
no, not
minutes?
just maybe 15 minutes around that time segment.
Did you watch until Barry left?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. There's actually another hour and a half where Josh and I
Yeah,
are effectively one on one. Yeah.
yeah, that's I'll get to it eventually.
No need to, but if you
Yeah,
do, I would be curious to see what your reaction would be.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
but dealing with conflict is very important for all of us to learn to understand each other and where each other's coming from. And when we share sensitive information, that it makes us vulnerable. And if we're in a vulnerable place, we could easily feel like someone's attacking us.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Eric. I actually think there's a step before that. By the
Okay.
time it gets to conflict, I think it's probably gone further than it needs to. So I think we still need to learn how to deal with misunderstanding, okay, before it gets to conflict.
Right.
So,
But what was yeah, why did it trigger Josh? Like, why was something he could that could have been explained, could have been discussed? Why did that trigger him so that he couldn't even listen?
and by the way, my point is not that it's wrong for Josh to be triggered. Josh is completely okay, I think, to be triggered,
Yeah,
but that prevented Kayla from speaking her mind. And I
yeah.
think
Well,
that,
see, I think it was just an inadvertent phrase that she said that he took the wrong way. I don't think she meant anything by that phrase.
right.
I think it was just slipped out, and Josh heard those words, and that I could see how those words, like thinking about how people treated the Native Americans, that is a triggering phrase, which I hadn't realized before. Yes, those two words really can, if you think about the history, it's so we're all dealing with all this cultural stuff, and we're trying to get together and yeah, to be reasonable to each other. Now, certain groups they have to cut out all that all the other parts of yourself. Just focus on what computers or whatever the topic is, and don't bring the rest of yourself in. But here I see you're really studying now. See, like this is like an Engelbart would have done this kind of experiment with
Yeah.
his team. Yeah, to see. Yeah, he would have been interested in. Yeah, like well, how are these people working together? What's preventing them from not working together, and what is coming up? I mean, he was into all that.
So those are the fundamental questions of quote unquote collaborology.
Yeah.
I want to at least welcome Heiner. Heiner, how it goes?
Oh, hi, Heiner.
And Heiner, speak whenever you like. But I'd also be curious. I don't want to just slough over, or yeah, exactly. I wanted to see if Barry had some thoughts. Barry, you're on mute, by the way.
As you may recall, every weekend on public radio, there's an episode with Shankar Vedantam called Hidden Brain. And this weekend's episode is exactly on the topic of how to manage and harness your emotional states and triggering states. And the whole hour was exactly on, they had an expert on this subject, and they talked about for an hour. I thought it was quite ironic that it came up exactly on the same weekend as this example. So if you're interested in what some of the experts have to say, you can, I put the link in it to this weekend's episode and you can listen to it.
I'll definitely note that. If you put that
Yeah,
in the
thank you.
chat, then I'll have it for the record. Yeah.
It's in both the chat and right after Eric's comment on the
Oh, okay.
Facebook.
Okay.
And
All
I'd
right.
also like to get a link to that video you mentioned yesterday about the woman in the playground.
Oh, yes. I'll post that as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
just for context, so I could see
I know
what.
that Gail's the one that got it, so I'll get it from her, or
Okay.
maybe I'll do a search, and do that, because the important thing was just the fact that there's a kind of a GoFundMe
Yep.
that's appealing to,
Yeah,
the
it's a
right.
cultural phenomenon
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
what's going on here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for
Okay.
viewing that. Okay.
Hmm.
And Barry, I do have to say, I recognize that was difficult to hear, and I do think that it was necessary because we've gotten close to having that conversation many times before and kind of skirted the issue, which in my mind just prepares its next instantiation.
I just
So
didn't need to be there. It was too
exactly.
It was just creating cortisol surges, and I don't.
Okay.
At my age, I don't need that.
Yeah, we each have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just thinking about one more thing. Just let me. I'll get back to it.
Okay. Then, Heiner, I note that you did unmute for a second before I asked Barry to speak. So I was just thinking, how are you? What's on your mind? You're not audible. You are
Not muted,
probably
but
on
we
the
don't
wrong.
hear you.
Right. There's probably no microphone hooked up to your device that's currently logged in. Still nada.
You don't have a microphone connected. It's not muting. Your microphone itself isn't functioning.
Now he's muted.
Muted, but he has to get his microphone.
Anyway, anytime you're ready, Heiner, please just reappear. Okay. All right. Anyway, for the purposes of examination, particularly because Josh said he wanted to do so, I did post yesterday's video as soon as it was available. And so I do wonder whether or not Josh has done any of the LLM analysis that he said he would do. I haven't yet myself.
So that's the point I wanted to make, that AI can just take the text without the emotions and it can infer things, and that's dangerous, I think. Yeah.
Yes. In particular, because AI is only, in my understanding, only working on the transcript. So AI cannot actually look at the actual video or audio and say, oh, here's someone being interrupted, or
Right.
here's someone speaking over someone else.
Someone looks
That
upset. Yeah, right.
exactly. That does not appear in the transcript.
Now, does Read
So,
AI try to do that? I think it tries to interpret who's speaking, like, what's going on. It tries to do some affective processing.
I've not yet seen it, but maybe I haven't studied it closely enough.
I once saw
I will look.
something where it like, yeah, noted, well, it is doing something with scoring people. I did
Oh,
see like,
yes, that's
yeah,
right.
and I'm not sure what it's scoring on. It's
Oh,
confusing,
and here's the unfortunate part about Read.ai. I'm not yet a premium Read.ai user, so it cuts off after 95 minutes.
Yeah,
And all the interesting stuff happened after that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I might just feed it into Otter.ai though, or I
Yeah.
might feed it into Read.ai under a different free account and see if it does better.
Okay, but notice how we're trying to trust these tools when just a human watching it, you're getting more insight.
Well, the problem with it, if I watch it, is clearly I would be labeled as biased. Right? You're probably not biased, okay? But I, going through it, would clearly be labeled as biased. So that's why it's an attempt to get an objective, quote unquote, interpretation. But I don't think at least, I'm not in the position of saying I trust that AI. I think it's another possibly useful input. I
Okay.
think yours is way more useful. But I would then, I mean, it's asking a lot of you, but I think there's a lot in the following session where Josh and I have a one-on-one where that could be something that I would love to hear some objective human interpretation for.
Hmm.
Heiner, you're back.
Nice and sunny there.
Hmm.
Still no
We
We
audio.
still
still do
not,
not hear you,
still don't
Heiner.
have a working microphone.
Still do not. Often you're on multiple devices, Heiner, so you're visible on one and audible on another. And I suspect you need to turn on your second device, the one that has the microphone.
Sometimes Bluetooth doesn't connect properly. There's all kinds
Hmm.
of possibilities.
Yeah, yeah. I've had my AirPods now for close to 2 years, and its battery life is no longer as good as it used to be. That's why I'm on these
Hmm.
Bose headphones now rather than the AirPods.
Yep.
Not to mention which, those AirPods have gone through the laundry twice. That might have something to do with its battery life.
I'd just like to share something else I learned in college. The sender, message, channel, and recipient model of communication. So those are the four pieces needed for people to communicate on both sides. So like Heiner is having problems on the sender side, and like yesterday, there were problems with the messaging, but it could be the channel. The channel's noisy or low bandwidth. Like we used to have just text. So imagine if yesterday took place in the early internet when it was just text and it was a flame war. Well, there would
Hmm.
have been time, like a day, for people to read and process and come up with a response rather than the seconds before reacting.
Yes. I think in that sender message receiver response
Channel.
model,
Yeah.
channel model, the sender and receiver are hugely, hugely dependent on how you define them. Because
Oh yeah.
if you include their KB, their knowledge base, their memory,
Hmm.
their history, okay, then I would agree.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's everything about the person
right,
that they're bringing
exactly,
to the conversation.
including that person's context and surroundings and environment.
Yeah, my background, my whatever, as I'm listening and watching the video, I'm interpreting it through my perceptual filters.
Yeah.
And so hearing sensitive information about childhood, that is touching. It's just why, how do I process this? Like it changes my view of Barry, I meant Josh and Kayla, hearing something they disclose, which makes them vulnerable. And I mean, yeah, so like we have to trust each other with that information, even though it's out there for anyone to search for now, you know. It's a question we have to really be aware that, yeah, we're on the public record all the time, essentially.
And how we navigate these moments is more an indication of who we are than if everything's
Hmm.
just going hunky dory.
Yeah, so like
Right.
could Josh have been stopped at a certain point just to I saw Barry trying to time out, like let's take some time to look at this before we continue. But apparently he was so motivated to make his point, and so it could be connected to something from his past that's triggering him that way. We don't know, but if we had acknowledged, okay, it looks, hey, Josh, we could come down a minute. It looks like something's bothering you. Like, would that approach may have giving him a minute to speak why he's feeling that? What do you think about that?
I think that that was an okay approach, is an okay approach, but Kayla was trying to speak prior to that, and
Yes, she
she was
was.
not given the opportunity. So I think that Kayla should have been addressed first,
Yeah,
but Josh was intervening when Kayla was trying to speak.
right.
Barry, your hand is up.
Yeah, I don't know, Sam, if I'm remembering this correctly or not, but I thought 2 or 3 weeks ago we had agreed upon the use of hand gestures for things like timeout, and
I would have done it. I would
but
have done it.
but it didn't. I mean, I was kind of upset because
Right.
I thought we had agreed that we could have a timeout nonverbal hand signal, and it just forget it, didn't work.
It did not work. Right.
Well, did Josh even see that if he's
Yeah,
driving?
yeah, he
Yeah.
Yeah.
actually
Barry
mentioned
even,
he
yeah.
mentioned he
Okay.
mentioned that I had asked for, just time out, let it cool down, chill, and I even explained, why it was upsetting me in clinical terms. And I was rather disappointed that, you know, it was disregarded. Heiner, did you get your microphone finally to work?
If you could unmute and try
You're
it
still
again.
on mute, Miner.
Yeah, but I mean, Zoom has a thing for testing your mic. He knows about that. He's Zoom enough to know how to test your mic on Zoom.
Okay. Heiner is now unmuted.
Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Now
Hey,
Yay.
we
now your
can
mic
hear
is
you,
working. Yes.
Heiner. Yes. Yes.
Hallelujah.
All right. So, what's on your mind, Heiner?
Lots, nothing, and everything.
Yeah.
Where would you
Like,
like to start?
No, the briefest thing to mention is the nothing component. That's quick.
Well, I love to see you, Eric. We did
yeah.
not really get in touch, but
Yeah, we
from
didn't make
the
it.
conversation, I realized in this group I missed a lot.
Yeah, not all the sessions are not all publicly available. The one from a few weeks ago with you, that's not yet publicly available. I think it's on Sam's account as private. Um, but yeah, now see, you were trying to ask me to participate in your event, and I was uncomfortable with that. And I sent you an email suggesting, see if you could get in contact with the people from this podcast. Um, so that's internal to me. Like, I do not feel like I have the expertise like if it's a casual conversation like one of these calls, I'm fine. But if it's a public event, it's different setting, and I don't know your audience, so I just expressed that to you.
I'm fully with you. I don't even know which event.
You mentioned something coming up soon, the May 19th, coming up in a week.
Okay, let's forget about this.
Hmm.
I was in deep threat uh, around our Dubai Design Futures we do with young people on 4 continents, but we just had to cancel it because of the war between India and Pakistan, and most of our people are really on this hotspot.
Oh my.
It might be also around this Equinox Earth Day, where I was involved with, I think, Sam, and we recorded it, and Barry was also slightly on the tangent. I have many parties, and presently I'm very relaxed. So if you have a question, I have to run out in 1 hour or so, but I'm at ease. So I really like this company. Sometimes I miss some of the people, like from the early days, like Tammy. But I think we should continue this exercise.
Yeah, thank you for giving us an update there.
I'm curious, Heiner, may I ask? Because in your session regarding Earth Day, you brought a number of friends. Um, Farah was there, and then a couple other gentlemen. I was curious whether they, I mean, you know them from way back, but that particular session, did they get what you hoped they would get out of that session?
You're a good questioner. Um, Definitely the film, the interview, this idea was supposed to do with me is not yet ready and published. It combines our rehearsal and then our session, and I didn't even get the AI summaries of that, but it's very close to my mind. How do we empower different mindsets, different religions, different schools of thought, and not just do like the Pentagon doing a rule set reset, like I saw papers in the early mid 90s, but really empower what I feel in your endeavor here, Sam, is to really give a voice to differences and diversities that matter.
And learn how to do that in a civilized, hopefully civilized and leveled up way. You know, it's useless to do it in the way that is so common these days, which is I'm right, you're wrong, I'm triggered, you know, you caused me to get angry, this sort of thing. I would like us to learn how to misunderstand better before we get to disagreeing better.
So
And I know, yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to mention I got an email today from an organization that I support called Seeds of Peace, and they run a camp up in Maine where they bring together teenagers from various countries and often conflict-ridden areas Israel, Palestine, India, Pakistan, and this email was specifically addressing India and Pakistan, telling the kids essentially, we love you, we support, we understand you're in a difficult place, and we want you to remember what you learned when you were here at camp. So seeing that, that's really touching, that these are human beings caught in a game between two nations fighting each other, and the solutions are at the human level.
Eric, I fully resonate. You see, I did this newsletter,
Yeah.
not a newsletter, but Tony Judge in Rio 92 started this idea of newsletters and really communicate what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have seen my newsletter. I did over some years with the Club of Budapest to really bring the best and the brightest, the diverse of all these honorary members, but also of our creative members together. And I'm just presently on Substack trying to bring all these efforts together into one, how do you call it, jump page, switchboard. So you can go wherever I've been since the mid-90s. And then we try and maybe find some learning out of that. Because all this bullshitting all the times and always taking on a new hype, like co-creation or whatever the new buzzwords might be nowadays, it's something like you are the nucleus, and somehow if we can get arranged to really meet some more Oriental, yellow, Asian men and women. Over to you, Sam.
You just triggered me. I'm so upset that you called me that. That
Yeah, well, you changed your name in Zoom.
doesn't matter. That's not how I identify.
Yep. Hmm.
You know, Heiner, years ago, I registered a domain name called teencongress.com. My fantasy was to get kids to look at current events and say, what would they do about it? You know, we got a few billionaires owning more than the bottom 60% of the United States, or whatever the actual numbers are. What would they do about it? You got people starving in certain areas of the country. What would they do about it? You got people and children and women and, you know, civilians being killed with no shelter and no food in areas of the world. What would they do about it? And the purpose was to get anywhere from 50 to 535 in each group. And the reason I picked that number is because that's the number in the US Congress. You got the representatives and the senators, and you got that many people. And all of those people have to be able to vote on things and make sense and recommend budgets and law. So I was thinking, you know, how could we get some bright young people to give some thought to this? And, you know, if we had more sign up, set up another group of 535 and take the next 535, set them up as another group. I was hoping that we would have multiples of these, but I haven't, you know, been able to figure out how to launch this thing yet. But that was why I registered the domain. So if you would like the domain, I'd love to be able to figure out, you know, what could work.
Now, it's interesting. This is years ago, and now you have very different children to deal with. This millennial generation, the digital natives, and I think there needs to be understanding of where they're coming from. And I posted a YouTube video of a millennial talking about that. Um, Now, I just happened to find that video because I was watching a DVD that I had recorded years ago, and that happened to be a little say that author was on a segment of the DVD, and then I looked up her her TED Talk. So this use of a dynamic knowledge repository, partly my brain and partly my archive, I find that interesting how these connections can happen.
Yes.
But my archives are very unorganized, and it's serendipitous sometimes that this actually happens.
Right. And notice that the archive, at least today, is possibly the only part that can be shared with others. The content of my brain, at least today, is not yet shareable with any of you, not in any meaningful, coherent way. Okay. So those external archives are so potentially valuable if we could learn how to do this right.
Right. So you've given me some hints at what's in your brain, like your career, the lisp, and yeah, what you've studied. So I got a sense of it. So like I have a mental model of Sam in my brain. It's imperfect, but yeah, and your life experience. You've shared some things over the years. I can relate. Yeah, I mean, it's some things that touched me, you know. So the question is, yeah, what do I do with that compared to my interests and where I am now in my life and what I want to do going forward?
That reminds me, Eric, way back a long time ago, we used to have this practice where anyone who came in new would be offered a chance to take one or two or three or however many sessions they felt they needed in order to introduce themselves,
Yep,
go into some background, go into what their current interests and energy and
right.
focus and projects are, and get people to know them and possibly engage.
Hmm.
So I don't know that that opportunity has ever been presented to you, but if not, I apologize and I would offer you that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that. I am really at a crossroads now, realizing how my skills really are not needed. It just seeing how my career has ended, and I have all this time now, which I am struggling with. I mean, there's plenty to fill it, but using it judiciously. And I could understand now how my father is feeling at age 93, that feeling, yeah, well, it's, yeah. So yeah, great. I have my hobbies. Like earlier, I was yeah, playing with a chord key set in Linux and things like that. But practically, it runs. It's old. It's it's not going to get me anywhere in the mainstream. It's something I could play with to keep me occupied, you know. And yeah, the project I'm doing for July, it's purely me, but I am reading a lot more now. Um, so like I read some books by Bob Martin and a little bit of the about AI. There's a new book out called AI Snake Oil, so giving me a little perspective there. So I'm really giving myself time without the pressure. I think that's important. And so it's like I'm back in college again. It's that feeling. I could go to a library and just enjoy looking up at whatever I want, you know. That's where I am now. Um, and the thing is, I don't have to do anything. It's just strange. So it's a very strange feeling.
Correct.
Yeah.
I fully resonate with you. I was just posting a link to a colleague from the mid 80s. He was a guru around archiving
Mhm.
and all this in the beginning of the computer age. His name is Ulrich Kampmeier. And what I feel is that people like you and Ulrich should meet one day. He just put all his essentials of his life endeavor onto the internet. He's been very successful in documentation and archiving for the last 30, 40 years. But I looked at his repository or his life achievement and said, well, what has been there before 92? Because all his references are just after that. So maybe with people like you, we should have a circle on what were the original intentions or endeavors which failed or which were too early. And
Yep.
that brings me back to especially sorry, I need the name, Barry. You see, what really happened with Apollo domain, distributed operating multi-axis whatever system, which we tried to launch in, it must have been early mid-80s. Why didn't it thrive? Why didn't the visual access of what you see is what you get did not really come through, only through or due to technological hindrances, or were there some scaling issues or technological issues that all these dreams of really going beyond this dualistic, reductionistic approach to what we actually wanted to do with computing and early ideas of Apple or Xerox or Haight-Ashbury, why did it fail? Because I'm really desperate when I'm looking at my desktop now. It is really old age in what I experienced 40 and more years ago.
Yep. Go ahead, Sam.
Heiner, I don't know much about the Apollo domain because I was around when it was being sold, but it was too expensive for me to ever get close to. So I felt that, there were plenty of other technologies that I could get my hands on. And accessibility is a huge part of adoption, right? You take a look at the next machine, which Steve Jobs did, also tremendously expensive. Steve Jobs thought $10,000, perfect. He thought everybody should have a $10,000 PC. I told him that'll never happen. And he laughed in my face. He said I was completely wrong. Even to the point where I said, why are you booting Next, the operating system, on an optical disk? It's so slow. And it doesn't have a floppy. He told me I was wrong on both points. There were 8 things I criticized about the Next machine. He got mad at me for each of those 8 things. Okay. So I only got experience with that because my company got involved in Next. My company never got involved with HP Apollo machines. As I understand, and possibly incorrectly, they were specialty machines, possibly used for CAD CAM, maybe those kind of applications. Hey, Kayla, welcome, Kayla.
Hi, Kayla.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't recall much. I'm just saying they were too expensive for me to ever touch. To this day, I've never touched an HP Apollo machine. Over.
Well, I introduced them to Europe. I really felt this was avant-garde, too early. I felt with IVN, and we hosted them in Europe with Autotrol technology from Denver, was really the top of the edge. But this is what we had with Howard Hughes, who started prime computers and all these people. Was this a really silly, crazy thing that some people are there, but their light got dimmed, or the light is not there anymore, but the visions and the possibility should be remembered. And the user interaction, which Apollo domain allowed, is still something on when you scribe on your computer to see what you get, and you can lump and splitter all this in 3 dimension is very much needed, and I think up to date today.
I interject quickly with 3 quick points. Eric, sorry, my apologies in advance. Number one, Hunter, would you find a video of a good HP Apollo domain interaction session that we could use to understand that? Number two, Kayla, welcome. Just FYI, it's probably on your mind. We did address some aspects of yesterday's session, and Eric had some interpretation of it because he did watch it multiple times. And then point number three, Eric, I recognize you got your hand up, so I just want to make sure that I was able to invite all three of those interactions. Over.
Happy
Yeah,
Mother's
thanks.
Day.
And yeah, I
What?
want to just let Kayla speak if she wants to.
Yes, yes, definitely. Kayla,
Thank you,
welcome.
guys. So I'm sorry I'm late. I was watching a video that my son posted on Instagram of myself over and over again of back in the day before I had kids. It was amazing. So, anyways, I would love to hear your interpretation, Eric. I actually ended up leaving and getting extremely emotional because a lot of the behavior that was exhibited towards me during that conversation was, very oppressive. It reminded me a lot about my background with, a lot of the abuse and assault that I experienced, verbal assault, of course. And I have problems with speaking with people, men in that particular to me in that way. And it's hard for me to put my past and my natural, I guess, emotions aside. And it was kind of good when I left because I had to regroup and go, okay, you know, this is a reoccurring theme when somebody speaks to me in this manner. I don't like it, but I realize that I have to push through it, so perhaps the next interaction that I have with somebody who speaks to me in that manner can be diffused either quickly, or I can have a little bit more empathy and actually listen to them. So I'd love to hear your interpretation, if you guys want to talk about that. If you don't, that's totally fine. I get it.
Yeah, I just want to say I feel when you talk about um, whatever abuse you experienced, that does touch us personally. Hearing that, feel the sympathy, the sorrow, but it's also something that has motivated you over the years. And I just want to acknowledge that we all come to this as our full selves, and whatever it is, we can be vulnerable when we share things like that. And that's what I noticed yesterday. There was both you and Josh were being vulnerable, and then um, there was something triggering. Now, what upset me is you were trying to make a point, something related to the video in the GoFundMe that Sam was talking about, and I never got to hear what you were trying to say because Josh interrupted, and then it got out of control. Um, but I think it really comes back to how we treat each other. As humans, are we accepting each other fully, regardless of where we came from? Now, earlier I was talking about Seeds of Peace, a camp in Maine where they bring together teenagers from conflict areas. And see, India and Pakistan now, they're inflaming their tensions, but it's the young people who had this experience. Hey, this is another human being, just lives somewhere else. And seeing that connection where they're playing together sports, they're doing some learning about each other. I mean, that's what has to happen, even just among us. We have our own images in our own minds of each other. And the closer that can come to understanding a reality, then the more empathy we can have. So I think it was important that that happened yesterday so we can learn from it, whatever learning we decide to take from that. And we just want to acknowledge we value you as a human being, and thank you for showing up.
Oh, thank you for that. It, um, I wholeheartedly agree. I am not very proud of some of the things that I say. Um, uh, I I don't know how to get past that oppression, and I've observed that in everyday society, in every type of hierarchical space, government, it's that oppressive way of speaking. It's that detraction. It's that like inability to just go beyond your own block, and to
Yeah,
just stop a person from their tracks before even letting them. And that was the whole point. It's like I wanted to get to to kind of the same grounds as some of the people that I feel, you know, I think, Sam, we were talking about, some white woman getting like close to $1 million because she called, a black lady and a black lady's kid the N word or something like that. And I'm like, where did we go wrong? That's what I wanted to ask. Where did we go wrong? And I wanted to ask a question directly to um, Barry and Josh. And I would hope that somebody is a little bit more mature enough, for me to say, hey, as white men, what do you think? What do you think? You represent, well, you may not agree with that, but that is what majority of the world sees you, was what I see you. And I feel bad that Josh doesn't thinks that's a complete insult. Um, but we didn't get there.
right.
So, I don't know what to say.
Yep. But see, eventually something really upset you that you had to leave. And that's something that's unfortunate. But yeah, think about like what internal to you, there's something going on that got triggered there, just like
Well,
Josh got triggered.
wait.
Yeah.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go
Is
for
it
it.
not obvious what happened? to me, it just seems so clear that Kayla was not able to express a point because every time she attempted, Josh interrupted.
Mhm.
And in my view, and if you hear the later part of that conversation, it was more important for Josh to express that he was offended by being called a white woman. So sorry, a white man. It was more important for him to express that than to actually hear Kayla.
Okay,
That was what came across very clearly to me.
right. And no
I
matter
don't
what was
claim that he
tried.
shouldn't. I'm not saying he shouldn't feel, offended, but we could address that if he gave a chance for Kayla to speak.
Yeah,
And
so in
that's
the
what, in my
yes.
opinion, didn't happen. But Kayla, I correct me if I'm wrong, Kayla. Okay, but that was the way I took it.
I mean, you're not wrong, in my opinion, but Eric, you have something to say as well?
Okay, so thanks, Sam, for clarifying. I mean, I may not see things that you may see as obvious. It could be just my mind.
Right.
But it just struck me. Okay, so the thing is, what can we learn about how we interact when somebody becomes disruptive? And people like there's a whole history on the internet of flame wars where things get out of control. But could anything have been done yesterday to calm Josh down where he would, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think, Sam?
No, Kayla needs to go first if she wants to, and then I'll go.
Okay.
I'd like to, I don't know, he looks like he's asleep. I'd like to ask Barry what your thoughts are.
The whole thing I found a source of dysphoria, sadness, depression, um, lamentations, uh, despair. I mean, I'm given to dysphoria anyway at my age, and this only compounds the feeling that it's hopeless. Our species is hopeless. And I don't, I keep getting that same message that our Homo schleppians just ain't going to make it. I've run out of ideas. I mean, I wrote in the chat in response to verbal abuse that I only know of two solutions. Number one, walk away. Number two, make good art. But in any event, disengage from the here and now. And I mean, I'm a conflict avoider sort of by nature. And if I respond to a conflict, it's by making art. Now, it's crappy art. It's song parodies and, satire and stuff like that. And what it does is it makes me feel better. And I publish it in a place on the internet where it's visible, but nobody ever looks at it.
So, Barry, can I ask you, when you were doing the timeout sign, I was driving, so I could not see you do the timeout sign. Um, and I would put myself on camera because I understand the nuances of actually seeing a person's face, but I haven't showered and it's
Or have I.
Mother's Day, so I'm trying to be kind to myself. And so is there anything else you wanted to happen other than for us to stop?
I think primarily it just cease
Okay.
fire and just let the fires cool down, calm down. There's raw umbrage and there's burnt umbrage. And I think raw umbrage is is problematic, and that if you let the fires subside and you can get to the point of burnt umbrage, then you can make good art or do something constructive to burn off the energy instead of just going head to head and escalating conflict. I wanted to de-escalate. I just wanted to de-escalate, and I tried. I tried to give signals to pause, de-escalate, ceasefire, and it was disregarded. And finally, it was just causing me physical distress, neurological distress. And I was surprised that, that when Sam put the video up, it went for another, what, 90 minutes or something after I left. I think the whole video was like 3.5 hours.
It was close to 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe that it went, when you put it up, I looked to see, when I left and I saw how much time was left. I go, my God, there's like an hour and a half left. Just the two of them. My God, this must have been pretty grim. I
I
wouldn't have been able to stand it. Go ahead, Kayla. Sorry.
It's okay. I heard you say something which now makes me laugh, but back then I disregarded it and I apologized. But you said something to the effect like, would it be better if she called you a honky?
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
tried to make him
so,
laugh.
yeah,
I tried to inject some humor. So I said,
yeah,
okay, he doesn't like being called a white man. How about if you call him a honky, thinking that everybody could laugh? It didn't work.
I
One
know.
attempt to do a little levity. Levity is lightning. It's leavening. Didn't work. And at that point, I thought, all right, this is hopeless.
So the reason why I asked you that is because when I wanted to when I reached out to both you and Sam afterwards, I wanted to ask you, Barry, specifically, you know, why didn't you say anything? And then I remembered that you had said that little thing. But the reason why I'm asking that as well is because oftentimes the majority of people don't say anything. And it's concerning for the people who try to stand up for themselves, and when somebody is oppressing them with that much force, that's how I felt. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I felt like Josh was just oppressing me with that much force. I feel like his energy when we come into these conversations often feel that way. It's often, I'll just be straight up, like I feel like Josh needs a lot of attention, and when he comes into this space, I get a lot of anxiety because I don't have a common ground with him. And I do feel there are some issues there, angry issues. I feel that there is like, something off, something wrong. And that's why I kept saying you have a problem. Um, and that's probably not a good thing to say. I acknowledge that. But at the same time, whether or not you felt, or if somebody felt, I guess I'll just ask you, did you feel like were both in the wrong? I mean, what are your thoughts, Barry, on that?
I
And
thought
what?
the whole, I thought the whole thing was futile, that people were talking past each other, yelling past each other. There's no communication was going on. And the only thing that made sense to me was cease and desist, discontinue and, pause. And if pausing, I mean, in, Sam will understand in communication theory, there's control S and control Q, which is to pause while I process and then resume. And if control S, control Q protocol doesn't work, then control D is the next thing after that, which is disconnect. And it came to disconnect. Go ahead, Sam. I see you have your hand up.
Sorry, Kayla, I'm going to go very briefly. Barry, I agree with you in microtransactions. In a single transaction, yes, if something doesn't work, yes, disconnect. It's like, reset the power. But it is not scalable. We've been talking now, Kayla has been bringing up a problem that has already scaled. So we cannot apply micro solutions to a hugely scaled problem. And that's where I would respectfully disagree with you on this. Okay, Kayla, over to you.
I would just like to understand, like in certain circumstances, that for instance, I'll give you an example. My son was bullied by this girl who had pushed him down a flight of stairs. Pushed my son down a flight of stairs. The whole eighth grade class was there. Okay. And nobody said anything. And to me, that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And when he brought it up to me, and I brought it up. He did the right thing. He brought it up to me. I brought it up to the teacher. I brought it up to the principal. The principal pulled this girl into the office and then she got pissed because he quote unquote snitched. And then they went to a party and she said, well, you know, she had some words with him and basically said, well, you snitched. And he was like, you fucking pushed me down a flight of stairs. And then the people at the party were the same people who saw it and they said nothing. And I I was telling my son, unfortunately, sometimes you just have to have the courage to say something. I don't know what goes on in anybody else's head. I'm glad you stuck up for yourself. I'm glad you stood for yourself because that behavior is not acceptable. It's dangerous. And so, that's how I felt. And I just would like to understand, Barry, why you didn't say anything. Did you feel that that was like a dangerous situation? Did you see that oppression, or you just didn't see it that way and you
Oh,
just
I saw. The thing is, when you said a while ago, you wanted to say to somebody, "You have a problem." Well, I do have a problem. My problem is I can observe and recognize a problem for which no functional solution comes to mind. That every solution that I've thought of and attempted has failed to de-escalate, and oftentimes has exasperated the situation, and no functional solution ever comes to mind. And I am very much aware of a substantial collection of systemic problems for which no solution has ever been found that could be implemented and made to work. And that's my problem. I can see problems that I don't know how to solve, and neither does anybody else.
But we're not asking you to solve a problem. We are just asking you to speak up.
Well, the answer is it's a problem that has never been solved in the annals of human history. Maybe it's been solved on paper by sages or oracles or whatever, but they've never been implemented. We can never agree to implement them.
Sam, I see your hand up. And after you go, I would love to hear from Eric. And Heiner, if he's
Okay.
around.
Okay. I'll be brief. The fact that you don't have a solution, Barry, is not necessary. Sorry, I'm finding a bad way to say this. You don't have to have a solution to actually do something. You don't have to have a solution to identify something that's being wrong. Something akin to what is that medical phrase? The Hippocratic Oath. First, stop the bleeding.
Right.
First, stop the damage.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to do. I didn't have a solution, right? Clearly I didn't have a solution, but I wanted to first stop the bleeding, stop the damage. Over. Kayla. You're on mute, Kayla, in case you're speaking.
Yeah, I was like cursing. I'm like, oh shoot, where's my Zoom? What are your thoughts, Eric?
Okay. I think there is a psychological phenomenon where people can be witnesses and not speak up. And an example was there's a famous case where there was a murder that was witnessed by a lot of people in an apartment complex and nobody spoke up. I think they thought somebody else would take care of it.
Yes, I heard of that, but keep going.
Yeah, so that's the case that would explain why people are very hesitant. Um, so, yeah, the thing is, can we even see why are we trying to solve a problem? Even the idea that we are even see we a lot of us tend to think in terms of solutions that coming from like an engineering mindset. And I've learned in therapy that that's not always what's important in a human relationship. It's, I think, more the empathy. And now I keep going back to, okay, how did this whole thing start? So, like, Kayla made a comment that Josh took offense to, and it was like two words that was the trigger. And could it have been stopped in that moment if, as soon as Josh reacted, if you had detected that and stepped back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way." So, but then I think things just went too fast. So I'm just trying to go back and seeing it was, yeah, is that what caused the trigger that we were too rushed? No, what was Sam think?
No, I think Kayla was speaking and being vulnerable and sharing something. And if anything, we're trying to give her space
Yep.
to actually make that expression. If someone then says, "Oh, I'm triggered by this," then Kayla loses her chance to speak. And I do think that this expression of being offended is a tactic that's used to oppress. You know what it's called when, and I'll say this, white women do it? We call her a Karen. And we have thousands of examples. It's used as a tool of oppression. And I didn't want to see it happen again. I see this because so many times I hear stories, not from Kayla, but from others, that they're just not given a voice. And when they try to speak, deflection happens. And I clearly saw that deflection was happening. So, yeah, we could say, "Oh, well, Josh was offended, so we should take care of him." What the fuck? Why shouldn't we first take care of Kayla, who was actually speaking? You know, we can take care of Josh later.
Okay,
Anyway,
but
sorry.
what would it have been effective? I'm just trying to see what could there have been an alternative if Kayla detected that
She
Josh.
did. She did detect it.
Okay, so like she misspoke essentially. Could
No,
that
she
have?
didn't misspeak.
No, okay.
Josh is a white man.
Well, forgetting about that I think the point is, yeah, Josh heard something differently than was intended.
Right. And that's
He
about
heard it
Josh. That's
right, but
about
then,
Josh.
but so that in his brain, it went right to his mouth. I have to defend myself. That,
Exactly.
right, and then
So one of the things I did say, Kayla, and I said this to you yesterday, is it was clear from the way Josh reaffirmed with me personally multiple times yesterday that it was more important for him to express his being offended, more important for him to do that than to actually listen to you.
mm,
And that is part of the oppression. When a woman does it, we call her a Karen. Over. Barry. Or Kayla.
I just wanted to mention that in that Hidden Brain episode that I referred to earlier, the Karen meme appears as part of that discussion in that Shankar Vedantam thing. The other thing is that I began with the timeout signal, which was disregarded, and then I moved to peace, peace, and I said I was unpeaced. And when that was disregarded, then I basically threw up my hands and said, "This is hopeless." You know, shrug.
Yeah.
I'm ineffective at calming anybody down or de-escalating. I'm just utterly ineffective. That every solution that I've attempted has been utterly ineffective.
Well, you know, it's hard because it has to come from the person. You have to, a
Yep.
person who is mature and has that emotional intelligence will have to calm themselves and do that, you know, self-soothe. They have to know how to regulate and, you know, I don't know. I get, you know, I see it so often. I've seen it all my life. I'm sure you guys have seen it all your lives, and it's very problematic. You know, when people can't see that about themselves. And again, I have to agree with Sam. It's almost a tactic now, you know, who has the bigger voice. Even in peaceful spaces, leaders are recognized as the people who are more articulate, the people who are faster to talk, the people who are louder to talk. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? You know, and in my in my defense of the squeaky wheel too, Or what else I have to say? Well, that squeaky wheel has a problem. You know, it's a wheel. You can't really, um, I can't really make sense of that. But still, it's, I had agreed to go on a panel, almost forced by the executive director of my cohort because I want to give voice to the people who normally don't have one. I would love to just be able to empower people, to speak when they feel oppressed, as I've been oppressed. Eric.
Yeah, thank you for expressing that. Sam posted something about a code of conduct a week or two ago, and I'm just curious what prompted you to post that.
Well, maybe I don't recall exactly what happened 2 weeks ago, but yesterday I was again, I guess, called on the carpet for not having made clear what the code of conduct was here in this particular conversation. And my response was, we have tried multiple times. There is a spreadsheet with 79 or 81 recommended adopted behaviors and patterns. And each individual person is invited to say, am I going to adhere to each one of these line by line or blanket wise? And 14 people have actually expressed their alignment or non-alignment with those practices, like not interrupting, like not shouting, like letting people speak before you speak, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So I've been accused of not being clear, but short of, being a dictator and saying this is the way you're going to behave, because we don't have formal agreement on membership and participation, I think that's about as far as we could have gone. And so we have had these things. So some people don't remember, and yet there have been attempts to do so, but I've spoken way too long now. We haven't gotten really back to the core of this thing, which is Kayla wanted to ask a couple of white men, I'm going to use her verbiage, what they thought about how things went wrong. Now, I have an answer, but I'm not a white man, okay? So I would like to bring it back to her core question, which she was not given a chance to ask yesterday. Over.
Well, first of all, I really tread lightly with this, and it proved the hesitation. Yesterday proved the hesitation I have, because I don't like to think of myself as racist, and I understand that there's lots of nuances, especially now. There are lots of labels, and anyway, I would love to ask, like my white friends, especially now white male friends, like because I kind of have an idea of what's wrong or what went wrong, but maybe I'm wrong, and it's not that I don't want to believe that there isn't racism or, I just like to hear it sometimes from the people who have this privilege that half of the country think is not there, and the other half does think it's there. So, because now it's hard. But what do you guys think? Like, what do you think went wrong? Is it, do you really, not you in particular, do you really think it's because there is deep-seated racism? Was there something personal? Like in the Talanoa, it's all personal, right? We all tell our personal stories. I would love to hear that. But if either of you would like to speak, again, I'm laughing because I'm nervous.
So that's why I asked to see the video that Sam mentioned, because I hadn't seen that particular incident before I could
Eric, may I
analyze.
quickly respond? May I
Yeah.
quickly respond since you're on that point and you brought it up twice? I put a link in the Collaborology Facebook Messenger
Oh,
group
okay, good. I'll check it
that has a
later.
Newsweek article on that exact
Oh,
story.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, I like to get all the information before I come up with an opinion. But in general, I have been really surprised at the general public's attitudes ever since social media and the internet that has made that clear, that the opinions expressed, and now we're seeing it with money. It's a surprise that growing up, I never would have imagined that people behave in racist ways. I thought most people grew up with the education system that I had, but no, people are coming from all kinds of different situations, and and the training. Now, I have seen places where kids are indoctrinated in racist attitudes, and I had an experience as a Jew being called out on it, and uh, it's just, yeah. So beyond our little bubbles, there is things we don't see, a hidden part of humanity. So I don't know enough yet to express my opinion yet of what's going on. Yeah, that's what I think.
I was thinking of a classical trope in a classical Western movie where there's a brawl underway in the tavern. And then the sheriff enters in the midst of this brawl. And what does the sheriff do to stop the brawl?
Fires his gun up in the air.
Exactly. He fires his gun in the air. We don't have it. We don't have that meme in Zoom. We can't come in and fire the gun in the air. And I try to do it, with peace and uh, there. And I don't even know if in real life it works. That it may just be a Hollywood trope for all I know. But it was, is one of those things that you learn from literature is how do you stop a brawl that's underway? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. Sam?
Kayla, I know you really should speak, but I'll just give you the Tai Chi answer, okay? The Tai Chi technique is let the opponent stop themselves. And it sounds stupid, but there are 5 different categories of action. And the one that's never apparent or acknowledged by the general public is joints, especially small joints. And what's effective with Tai Chi is you hold the person's finger if you can get to it, okay? And usually you can get to it in such a way that if they struggle, they break their own finger. You don't break it, but they break it themselves. Now, if that doesn't work, you go to a larger knuckle, like the thumb. That doesn't work, you go to an elbow. That doesn't work, you go to a shoulder. If that doesn't work, you try for an ankle. But you let the opponent decide. So I just wanted to give you that particular lesson from Tai Chi. Over. Kayla?
No, I was just looking at Barry's face and I like that face.
What's the name of that face?
You're
Vexed and
just
perplexed?
yeah, you're just like actually listening and not bored. You're like or falling asleep. I was like, ooh.
I'll
Anyways, let's
mention that
say.
I do have a problem with facial expressions. I learned that yeah, probably some form of autism where it's very hard for me to understand facial expressions.
Same here. I have a relatively unexpressive face.
Some people are skilled at micro muscle detection.
I'm not me.
But people told me I should never play poker because they could read the cards right off my face. So how are you feeling, Kayla?
Good. Now that I saw pictures of myself looking hot.
Hey.
So
Damn, I look so good.
So these are the archives we leave behind, huh?
Yeah, just little pleasures and I definitely feel better today. Yesterday I felt like shit. Oh my God. There's this weather influx here in Southern California, that is like yesterday was almost up in the 90s. And this
Oh,
morning it's pretty hot, but I heard it's gonna go down to like the 50s or the 60s and like some strange pressure. So with the weird blow up with Josh and all that trauma coming back to me, and that long drive to Long Beach. I mean, I spent 5 hours on the road, and then crying and coming back home. Like, it just did not feel good. So this morning I feel so much better. So thank you for asking.
Sure.
Hey, Kayla.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd share. This morning it was 48, and today our high here is going to be 62.
Oh, it's perfect. We have a lot to do. Our species has a lot to do, but I haven't lost all hope. My hope is slowly draining. But thankfully I have two beautiful kids. I'm very privileged to have children to that sort of listen to me, not all the time. And I hope to be a good model to them. And I hope that I am pointing them in the right direction. And um, I I was telling Sam yesterday, why didn't you just mute him? And Sam gave me a fantastic answer that I understand, and I sat and contemplated that for a little bit. It's like, ew, do I want to like put myself in positions where, it's almost a social experiment that might, you know, um, put me in this mood again? And, thankfully, I've got that fight in me and that curiosity and that flexibility in me to put myself in these situations, but I am getting tired of it. I would really love to align myself with more people like yourselves, into emotionally intelligent, just intelligent academically in general. Um, and I hope that our community, like-minded communities, grow. And I feel like the only way to do that is to, you know, bond together and empower each other. Um, Hold each other accountable and hold yourselves accountable and just do good for the community. Um, but yeah, go ahead, Sam.
May I give an analogy? I was contemplating the last several months that I've spoiled my kids too badly. My kids are spoiled rotten. And I did it because I loved them. I wanted to give them opportunity. I wanted to give them every advantage that I felt I didn't have. I wanted them to have education that I didn't have, travel that I child. Sorry, what? Did
For a
I get
moment,
lost?
for a moment there, your audio cut out, but it's back.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to give my kids every opportunity that I felt I did not have. Okay. And I think that's been a problem. I think the kids, in some sense, don't really appreciate that not every kid grows up like that. And secondly, they don't appreciate to the extent that I personally feel, and this is a poor me story now, how much I had to sacrifice in order to, give them all those opportunities. And so I want to blow it up to a macro scale, not just make it all about me. I think that the US society has been spoiled by baby boomers and the war generation. Democracy was installed. In the 50s and 60s, economy flourished. Anybody working a reasonable job could buy a home, send their kid to college, retire in, some reasonable number of years, own a car, have two kids. That was possible. That was the American dream. And for a brief couple of decades, we had it. But that ignores and it sort of wipes off of our memory the fact that freedom has been hard fought and usually not won, usually been lost for millennia. That people have been oppressed, and only in a small instance, and it was the first 200 years of the United States, you might even argue that there was a chance that freedom might actually have taken hold. And now there are other countries as well that are enlightened, okay? But the US is a big symbol of it up until recently. So what I think people have not realized is freedom needs to be fought for every day, every front, every instance. Because when we get complacent and we think, oh yeah, my 401k is going to be there. Oh yeah, I'll be able to retire, when I'm 65 or whatever, or 55 or 72, whatever your age is. Or yeah, everything's going to turn out fine. That I think is complacency. I don't think MLK had that kind of complacency. I don't think most minorities have that kind of complacency. Most other countries don't have that complacency. But we recently have grown up complacent. So we think that, oh, geez, I have to fight for freedom, that's, you know, something I should not have to endure. Whereas for tens and hundreds of thousands of years, it's been necessary. It's been a part of life. And for a brief moment, we forgot. So I think we just have to remember that freedom is not free. And I think it's going to be hard for this society to switch into that mentality again because we've had it so fucking good for so long. Over.
Yep.
Thank
We're
you.
oiled by wretched excess.
I would like to add to that. I think civic responsibility is what is needed these days. Because fighting for freedom, well, yeah, unless there's a war, but you could see how the military, it's also a crazy system. I think recognizing, yeah, where does your bread come from and what is required to support yourself. I think kids will eventually come to it at a certain point in their life. I know I had to come to that uh, realization that I'm responsible for my life and where it goes. And for me, it took having a job where I had to travel every week to a different state and back, and I had to make that work. Um, and so let's have hope that people will have those epiphanies. The thing is that, yeah, what can we reasonably influence? Well, it's our local area, whatever is going on locally, that's where we can have the most influence, and our families. So I think these sessions where we're coming together and exploring all this. It's valuable. The question is, can something be used? Can these artifacts be used somehow? Maybe a professional might take that scenario and create a teaching experience from it, or not. It doesn't have to, but just as an example that, yeah, it so this will live on the internet in obscurity for who until somebody is pointed to it. And that's the thing that the references of how people find what's important, I think, and how society finds the information it needs. So I'll just mention I'm reading Ted Nelson's PhD thesis from Keio University in Japan, and he touches on a lot of the major issues going back to just literature, what literature used to be and what happened to it and where should it be. And that's where I'll leave it. Thanks.
Briefly, I think this is hugely valuable, not because we're coming up with any useful insights necessarily, okay, which is itself a sad statement because we like to think of ourselves as reasonably intelligent. But someone very wise, my friend Kimberly, once told me, either you're a great example or you're a horrible warning. Choose one, okay? So if we can't figure it out, we're being a horrible example that maybe others could study and learn from. Our aspiration is to be a good example, but I don't think we're that yet. Over. Sorry, I think her words were be a good example or a horrible warning.
Well, the U.S. has become a pariah nation.
In a very short number of months.
Yeah.
We used to be respected around the world, regardless of all our bad habits, like, killing people. There used to still be enough positive things that people wanted to come to the US.
We're a pariah.
Now, oh, I don't know if any of you heard, Eric. May I tell one more story? I would really like to share this. Last week I was trying to plug my PC into a new location. Some of you heard this yesterday, but I was stupid and careless, and I toppled over my big screen. It's a 50-inch big screen I use for my PC. It's 4K. It's great. I've used it for quite a long time. So for a week now, I've had to figure out and look because I'm trying to manage my budget these days. So yesterday, I finally went to go pick up a nice 43-inch 4K screen for effectively $50. Okay, this is great, and it was a really nice neighborhood called Woodinville here in the Seattle area. It's called the wine country of the Northwest. Like, a lot of wineries, successful people are there, nice big houses, yardage, etc. Okay. Now, when I finally got there, I found out that the couple is from Argentina. He'd been in that house for 7 years, been in the US for 22 years. And I said, oh, how come you guys are moving? And he said, we're going back to Argentina. He said, we came to the wrong country. And that hit me. In fact, I found a part missing. So I messaged him later on after I got home and tried to put the stand back on the TV. And he was so nice. He said, I didn't realize the part was missing. I'll give you all your money back. I'll personally drive to your location so you don't have to come to Woodinville. I'll do this. And I said, no need, no need. You don't need to apologize. And I said, I apologize that this country has let you down. So thank you for letting me tell that story again. And I'm sure that's happening, elsewhere in numbers.
Yesterday I went on a like rabbit hole on TikTok. I let my brain just like rot on TikTok. But I did see the national parks. What they all of them hopped on the bandwagon and started to do this trend where they put some obnoxious music on and then show like the national parks where they had like some, I guess, um, some stripper guy start the conversation and then go into the national parks. It was just brilliant. And it was kind of a way to fight without being, too obvious, I guess, and a way to keep people on their page. And I subscribe to all of the national parks that did that. I just thought it was brilliant. So, there are people who are fighting. I tell my children, you're young, but you could just educate yourself. Educate yourself. Do the right thing. Be good people. As a single mom and a full-time professional that still does extracurricular that I'm tired of. I try to do my part without overextending. And I have to realize that we have evolved in such a way that people are starting to recognize the importance of, maintaining a work-life balance. And while that's not a direct fight, you're not in the actual front lines, you are becoming an example of the possibility of an elevated society. And that's what I would like to represent and hope that other people are inspired by. You can elevate society. Everybody just, again, has to do their part, whatever that may be. And like I said yesterday when I jumped on rather late, just people just need to get their head out of their asses, do their part, be accountable, and just fucking stop. Just like what Barry was trying to tell us, stop, you know? It's a little bit more complicated than that, but there's a way to fight. I have some hope. Over. Go ahead, Sam.
So let me confess, Barry, I did see that you tried to create the truce symbol, the peace symbol, okay, the stop symbol. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, Josh is not stopping. Had Josh stopped, I would have stopped. But if I stop, then Josh just gets to run roughshod over Kayla. And in a sense, the oppression would have still happened. That's why I didn't stop.
Could have said, can we all agree to stop and wait for him to say yes or no?
Maybe.
It's a negotiation. You know, can we stop? Can we all agree to stop? The answer
I
is
didn't
no.
hear a
The answer is no.
negotiating attitude.
Well, but you can't just assume. You got to at least give it a shot.
Well, I wasn't assuming. I was, yes, coming to a conclusion based on probabilities. But, you know, yesterday was not the only instance where something happened.
You
There's a history.
you did mute him once and he left, I think, as I recall. That was like
Yes,
4 weeks
and
ago or something.
yes, and that was with Marc-Antoine Perron, by the way, because he did the same thing pretty much to Marc-Antoine Perron.
Oh, because he's a man? Just kidding. Sorry, Sam.
No, in
Because
that
he's a white
instance,
man.
in the
Sorry.
instance, just for the
It's
record,
fun
I
to make
felt that
him laugh.
Marc-Antoine Perron was trying to say something, and again, every time he tried to speak, I heard him being cut off. And that's when I said, hey, please don't do this. And after repeated instances of, you know, firing back at me now, then I just said, Josh, if you continue this, I'm going to mute you. And he continued, and I muted him.
Mhm.
So how do you bring awareness to that too? Because, I'm not lost on the problems of society. I am not. Um, and I feel bad for using this as an example, but it could go really south. And I do have some concern, you know, um, I know Josh is a family man. And if he is acting this way to us, what's he doing with his family? And that's awful and it's like wild, right? But I would like, how do you do that? How do you like try to bring awareness or help somebody to see where their mind frame could be heading? Um, and in my own experience with my kids, I try to stop it like, hey, look at where you're at right now. That could lead to X, Y, and Z. It's doesn't look good. When I talk to my kids about, the whole snitching thing, I'm like, if you're an adult and you act like that, if you tell somebody, if you tell someone, oh, don't snitch, those are oppressors. You know what oppressors
Yes,
are? They're child
yes.
abusers. They're like, they beat women. They keep them from their families and friends. That is classic. And how do you bring awareness to that really bad behavior? Um, and it's not just one person, it's a lot of people. It's, you know, how do you do that? Because I would love to walk into my son's eighth grade class and just straight up be like, you know what? If you guys don't stop this retarded way of thinking, you guys are all going to be oppressors. And you know what oppressors are? They're X, Y, and Z. So you want to be like that? I mean, I wish it was as simple as talking to somebody very plainly, but unfortunately there are all these like social nuances and people get triggered and all this stuff. Like you can't really have a plain conversation without, unearthing someone's trauma and offending them and stuff. So, anyways, I'm just rambling. I'm sorry. Over.
Now you connected another point for me, which is this whole issue of being politically correct. I think political correctness is a form of oppression. It really is. So when somebody says, "Oh, you can't say that. That's not okay to say in society." What the bleep? Can I not actually talk about something factual? You know? So if people don't really want to hear something that's unpleasant, eventually it finds its way into political correctness. And that's the beginnings of silencing people, censorship, oppression, denying people the freedom of speech. And it starts on a slippery slope with, "Oh, that's not okay to say."
I really have to thank the people who actually called me out on my shit, on the the behavior that my parents had taught me and that I was doing to my children. I appreciated that. And when we're when I talked to my boss about write-ups, she was like, "Oh, she was just afraid of the backlash that people will have." And I'm just like, think about it as this. It's an opportunity for them to correct their behavior. I've been written up 3 times. And honestly, I'm proud to say that because it corrected my behavior. I didn't want to be fired. I didn't get fired from these jobs. I left on my own accord and it was peaceful. So it is opportunity to correct yourself because I don't want that to happen to my kids. Like the last thing that I want to do is become a grandparent and see my children do something to their children and me be completely heartbroken. That's what happened to my dad. And so like how do you do that without having to be a little bit straightforward and to say unpleasant things that might not be politically correct in somebody's mind. Like, how would I be able to tell Barry and Eric, like, hey, what is your perspective as a white person? Like, what would I call you guys? That would differentiate you from Sam and myself and get to the point. And that was where I got pissed off at Josh. It's like those are the little details. What I should have said is, "I'm sorry I called you a white guy, but what do you want me to call you?" And also further my point of asking you guys um what you think. And for the record, and Barry, you heard this, Sam, you heard this. I like white people. You know, to me, I've got a cousin who married a white man that I love. They're in my family. You guys are like my friends. I really it doesn't offend me when somebody calls me a brown person. It makes me laugh when somebody calls me a fob. Whatever. Like in fact, I love being called a brown woman because I like my skin. And that was again the whole point of the conversation is that safety. That was Eric. If you want to hear like what really sparked that is the fact that I almost am starting to feel unsafe about being a woman of color. Almost. Because I'm seeing, a lot of social media about like deportation, how they're deporting US citizens, people who actually came here legally, got their citizenship because they are of a certain race and a certain color. And so the basis of that whole question was that. And that's it. You know, I wanted to have that, what I knew was a hard conversation, but a very necessary conversation to have. And then someone just stopped it because they got triggered from being called something that I don't find offensive. But that was not the whole point. Anyway, over. Go ahead, Sam.
So for the record, I'm not a white man, but I would like to respond to your question if that's okay.
Go for it.
I'll recommend yet again one of the best documentaries I have ever watched in my life about the United States. And it's called 1313. And it taught me and showed me how the US was built on the economy of the South, how the economy of the South was based on cotton, how cotton was possibly profitable, wildly profitable, because of slavery. And that's where the old money was and got created. Now, eventually, we got more prosperous, other industries were created. And another thing I found out was how Central Park, New York was created. It turns out it was a black neighborhood of reasonably successful, middle class blacks who started businesses and done things, and become well enough to buy homes. And certain people didn't like that. So I believe through eminent domain, they just said, we're going to make this area a park. And all those people lost their homes. That black neighborhood is erased from history. None of us learned this in school. And what is now Central Park is a beautiful place, but we forget how it was created. So slavery and exploitation of black people, and then in other instances, people from China who came over to build the railroads, and the killing of Native Americans, and then Mexicans who came across the border to help us with our crops. All of that is based on exploitation, and certain people don't want to acknowledge that because they know deep down it was wrong. And I believe there's a lot of fear about people being treated equally because they know that, oh, if these people finally get the rights that they deserve, then they're gonna take it back out on us meaning the people who did the oppression, because they know it was wrong. Deep down they know it was wrong. That's why they don't want this equality. I could say a whole lot more, but I really recommend watching that documentary if you haven't done it. Over.
I started watching it and I couldn't get through it yet.
It's
I'll go back and
difficult.
watch it again.
It is
Yeah,
difficult. Yes, I have to warn you, there are very difficult images being shown in that documentary.
it makes me
Grisly
so
images.
sad. I know.
I'd like to just mention I was in Chicago in April and I visited several museums, but the one that really got to me was the Fields Museum. It's a natural history museum, and there were exhibits that had to be covered up because there were artifacts that were stolen from Native Americans inappropriately for the museum back in the day. And they're in the process of trying to reconcile that back to the tribes. And just seeing also like South America, different cultures. I just the experience of looking at all these exhibits made me cry because it dredges up feelings of guilt that from the past, not necessarily my life, but yeah, how do you come to terms with acknowledging this guilt and making amends for it and in an appropriate way? And I could only just see a path forward of yeah, treating people with respect going forward. So, and it's a lifelong process of yeah, just learning how to. Really, it's a process of exposing myself to more diversity, more different opinions. So, just it's tricky. It's a process. And what I wanted to say earlier, if you think about like a 12-step recovery program, like an alcoholic needs to admit that they're an alcoholic before they could even begin any remediation or amends. So something like that concept is needed, but usually it takes a lot of pain before that person comes to that epiphany. So I don't have answers. I'm just making
That's
connections.
going to be a very difficult 12-step program.
Yep. Well, is
One of the steps
America in
is
one? Yeah.
go back to those you have wronged and make
Yep.
things right. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. But is America needing a 12-step program? Are we in one essential? Maybe.
Yeah, analogically, I would say yes.
Are we really?
No,
We're
we're
not
not in
admitting it.
one. We need one.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
That's
gonna
what I'm saying.
say.
We're
Yeah,
not
we
in
really
one
need
yet.
the 12-step program, yeah. Isn't that's how the apartheid ended, right? Or there was two presidents, I forget.
Truth and
Even told you guys this.
reconciliation. They had a truth
Yeah.
and reconciliation process.
Go ahead, Sam.
Since we brought up some peripherally related religious question, I thought it might be worth, since we had 9 minutes left, to get people's opinions, perspective, thoughts on the new Pope. I mean, I saw a very brief description, but the brief description that I read about him kind of did impress me. And I think it's also telling, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but that he was selected as Pope in the very first ballot. They didn't need more rounds. That's my understanding.
I think it was the third or fourth ballot.
Okay, all right, then I'm wrong. Sorry. Again, I didn't read it very carefully.
I would say we need to watch his actions going forward, see how he handles issues that
Yeah,
come his way. And yeah,
yeah,
is he sincere? And what is the role of the Catholic Church in the
yeah.
world these
I mean,
days?
what I read about his life history says that he's been this way for quite a while, that it's not just an act put together recently, unless he's got a very good marketing department, which I kind of doubt. But you know what? I also am curious to see the right/MAGA response to him being selected as Pope. I've already seen some criticism from the right about some of the things that he's been saying. So, are they really Christians?
Well, they don't follow the teachings of Jesus. They're Christians in name only, but they don't. They may give lip service, but
Yeah.
they don't practice the
Yeah,
teaching.
well, there's Catholic Christians, there's Protestant Christians. I think we've now found hypocritical Christians.
And to simplify that, I usually ask, are you Jesus Christian or a mega Christian? Which one are
Yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah.
Is America a Christian nation?
Uh-uh.
I would
We're
say
not
no,
supposed to be, yeah.
but there's some people that want to make it that way, quote unquote, even though it's got nothing to do with the Jesus Christianity.
Yeah, I think the word Christian is very ambiguous because if you look at the Crusades, the history of Christianity,
That's
yeah,
right. That's right.
yeah, it's
I haven't read too much on the new Pope. I was sad when the old Pope died.
Yeah. As the Pope goes, I thought he was pretty good, although not perfect.
Who
You know,
is?
Catholicism's kind of come a long way too. They're not as damning as they used to be.
But they still are, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, not as damning as they used to be.
It's still damnation, right?
Exactly.
need some nuns with rulers to wrap people's knuckles.
So, yeah,
Oh man.
especially in
Hey,
school.
yeah, speaking of which, I don't know about you guys, but I literally physically have been wrapped by a ruler by I don't know what she was, but she was a female teacher.
Mm.
Have any of the rest of you had your knuckles wrapped, in school?
I saw it when I was very young. My my very first elementary school that I went to, I saw the principal take a boy out, like in the courtyard and have like a paddle and spank him with it. I saw that and it scared the shit out of me. I'm like, oh, I never want to be that kid. So it worked.
For the record, this is in third grade, and her name was Ruzinko. Last name, Ruzinko. Do you remember the teacher's name, Kayla?
The principal? No, I don't remember her name or his name. It was a male principal. Remember that scared straight?
Yep.
Where- I mean, it failed eventually. You know, that's very high risk. But I mean, hey, there's a lot of parents I know that would love to recommend certain kids to do that again, go through that program.
I suspect there's certain thoughts that Barry's now thinking about that story.
The knuckle wrapping story?
Yeah, the punishment rules.
Well, when I was a freshman in high school, I recall one of the teachers literally picking up a kid and slamming him against the wall.
Jeez.
Ooh.
That was I think that was the most violent episode I ever witnessed. Certainly in school, I'm not sure if I could say that. Probably not in my life, but certainly, what are you, 14 years old and freshman when you're a freshman?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah.
Did you ever have slave day? AKA freshman initiation day? Anybody?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, maybe it was me in my backward school. So I did go to a Catholic school. Um, and we used to have slave day. We called it slave day. And it was where you picked a freshman as your slave for the day and you humiliated them for the day. And that was their initiation right to the school. Can you believe that? A Catholic school did that.
Awesome. Awesome.
I actually picked up my slave. Um, I know it's awfully comfortable, right? At like 6:30, maybe 7 in the morning, I had him wash my car. And then, me and my friends felt bad for them. So we took them out to breakfast. And then I dressed them in my Tahitian outfits and made them dance in front of the whole school.
Sounds like you had more than one.
Well, my friends, often the groups kind of combined. And so that
Ah,
way, the freshmen can be together and it's not that cruel.
mm.
But I remember that. And then every slave had to parade, and do some type of extremely humiliating thing in front of the whole student body.
So was that an educational experience?
It
Yeah,
was largely for that I never actually wanted to join a fraternity.
yeah, the hazing. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
Yep.
No, thank you.
So this is just models of human behavior that we've inherited from what, ancient Rome or something?
Yeah.
We're not we're not leveling up.
Homo schleppians.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I've got to actually be a mom and contemplate on whether I should hang out with my family, which is not what I want to do, but I feel another damn obligation and I am in good spirits, or if I should do a mimosa brunch and spend lots of money and just be with me and my kids and them not talk to me and be on their phones because that's what they like to do.
Well,
So I
happy
think,
Mother's Day.
thank you guys. Thanks for letting me speak
Sure.
and drive a little bit of the conversation. Good to
So
see
Kayla,
everybody.
It's
I
the
know I said this to you personally yesterday, but really, you are an excellent mother. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
commend you for what you do for you and your kids. And I think this day, yes, you should celebrate. You've been doing a heck of a job as a mother.
Can I say one more thing to that point?
I
I
can't have the
generally
last word.
No, I like the last word. No, you can have the last word. But one more thing, when I did have a talk with my son who was really upset at me, he had said at one point, he goes, "I know I shouldn't feel this way, but sometimes I'm really jealous of the dogs."
That's funny.
So yes, I have lots of improvement as a mom. However, I will take that compliment. Thank you, Sam. So if you don't want to be one of my kids, being one of my dogs was probably a better option.
Hey, on the record, just for the record, okay, and this is not the first time I've said this. I've asked Kayla to adopt me before.
I think you guys want me to take you guys on walks and adventures.
I want to go to Costa Rica. I want to go to Hawaii. I want to go, those fancy dinners you have, and,
Oh,
taste some of your fancy cooking.
oh my gosh. Yeah, one of
Anyway,
these days. Okay, thank you
enjoy the
guys.
day. Happy Mother's Day.
yeah.
Bye.
Nice.
Yeah, I should call my mom today, huh? Actually, no, she's in Taiwan. For her, Mother's Day was yesterday. Oh,
Oh,
geez. Oh, well, I'll still call. And for the record, may I ask, Eric, Barry,
yeah.
would it be offensive if I called you white men?
Well, I don't think it would be an accurate characterization, but I wouldn't take offense. It's just,
I don't think I get offended at anything, but I now have a different appreciation of how that can be taken out of context, where white men refers to the oppressors of Native Americans.
Okay. And then my need to always have the last word, quote unquote. There's a quote that came to mind when Kayla was saying something earlier, which was something like, criticize a fool and he'll hate you. Criticize a wise man and he'll thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I hope I didn't criticize you though.
We're all learning from each other.
Walking each other home. Has it been a day?
I think
Shall we
so.
call it a day? Happy Mother's Day, guys.
You too. See ya.
Bye for now.
Bye.